French Open 2026. Unique tournament for a lot of reasons, some of which I will cover, some of which I know I want to cover, some of which might come to me as I'm doing so, and yet there are many things that I don't know. So, this is going to be a very improvised video, and we'll see how much of it is within some framework and how much of it is completely off the rails. It could be completely off the rails, it's rather late, but this tournament has reminded me of a lot of wonderful things about the sport and why a lot of those things converging makes for a unique Grand Slam. Tomorrow will be the women's final featuring Mira Andreeva against Maja Walinska, and on Sunday, 2 days from now, we'll see Alexander Sasha Zverev taking on Flavio Cobolli in the men's final. Today is June 5th, 2026, and here goes. US Open 2020, Novak Djokovic gets defaulted after unfortunately accidentally striking the lineswoman, which results in him being disqualified. For the first time in that timeline, in that era, a Grand Slam final not featuring Federer, Nadal, Djokovic is now on the cards. And ultimately, that ends up being Alexander Zverev, common suspect, against Dominic Thiem. Storyline between the two, Dominic Thiem had the upper hand, a massive upper hand, in that rivalry. So people are still kind of expecting Dominic Thiem to win this match, to run away with this match. Reversal of fortunes, we see Alexander Zverev leading that match by 2 sets and a break. Then, in his own words, in fact Zverev talked about this today in his post-semifinal press conference, Zverev's serve breaks down, Dominic Thiem makes a heroic comeback from 2 sets to love down to win his first and ultimately final Grand Slam. This is pre-wrist surgery Dominic Thiem, so he would feature in 2 more Grand Slam finals at the French Open, have a very signature, remarkable performances at the Grand Slam level, several key victories against the big 3 as well. Very reputable player, very unique style, probably of a bygone era, very, very stellar career, ultimately being forced to retire after an injury-ridden latter half of his career. Yet he snags his Grand Slam when the opportunity presented itself, and despair for Alexander Zverev, who at that time was in his first Grand Slam final. He came so close, and ultimately just a bit too far. Sad, sad, sad. After that, the next year, US Open 2021, on the women's side, the final features some challenger, some qualifier, by the name of Emma Raducanu, who takes on Leylah Fernandez, both of them in their first Grand Slam final. Emma Raducanu becomes the first qualifier to win 10 Slam matches on the trot, to register her first and till date only Grand Slam. Lots of similarities. We look at Maja Walinska from Poland, 24 years old. Emma Raducanu was, I think, 16 or 17 when she won that US Open. Maybe I think she might be 18. I don't remember. Walinska is 24. She had a break from the sport for some other reasons that I'm not aware of, and she made a comeback to active competition, with her goal being to break into the top 100 of the WTA rankings. Walinska made a remark after her 3rd round victory, I believe, that she was not sure if she would be able to cover her hotel expenses. Some sponsors heard about this, or some tennis company, or some company heard about this, and they funded her hotel bill, which was a remarkable event and makes the whole story even more endearing. She is now finding herself in the final of a Grand Slam after a very, very high-quality match against Kalinskaya, and then against Diana Schneider in the semifinals, quarterfinals and semifinals respectively. She has a very good slice, she has a very adaptable forehand, she benefits from the lefty angled serve. There is no amazing firepower on the serve that I've seen yet, and yet I've seen limited amounts of play from her, so I might be off with some of these details. It is going to be a very unique match against Mira Andreeva. Speaking of Mira Andreeva had one of the most anticipated matches on the women's side. Some of the reasons were only connected to the play and to the tennis, and some of those were connected to the comments of her opponent in some of the press conferences. For people who follow that, they know. And yet this match featured some very high quality tennis from Mira Andreeva. It seemed that the conditions favored her a little bit, and she also was faced with a challenge of nerves, and she faced them and she overcame them. In the first set, very clean. In the second set, Andreeva looked like she had the wind in her sails until weather threatened her chances. The the roof at Philippe Chatrier had to be closed to avert possible rain. Now, a lot of cases have occurred where players lose their concentration, they lose momentum, and ultimately the match turns on its head. It looked like that could be possible because her opponent, Marta Kostyuk, who herself had been on a hot streak, undefeated streak, on clay, won 2 matches when this entire narrative was unfolding. Mira Andreeva then again held her nerve, closed out the match to enter, I believe, her first Grand Slam final. So, 2026 Grand Slam final features 2 first-time Slam finalists with completely different stories and yet almost equally, if not just very, very comparably high levels of interest in both. On the men's side, oh my. Oh, well, I would be remiss if I did not mention the high-quality matches featuring Aryna Sabalenka and Naomi Osaka. Sabalenka probably played one of the highest levels that I've seen of her, and again, I've not seen as much of the recent matches of Sabalenka, and yet, from the highlights of that match, I can say that her serve has not looked this good in a very long time, and Naomi Osaka, to her credit, was hanging in there, while also probably wondering where this Sabalenka came from. The nighttime session does feature some incidents where players come up to a level that they don't expect of themselves, or their opponents don't expect out of them. So it's one of the more compelling stages to see the difference in performances in heat versus at night when the heat is obviously low. And yet it also means that the clay is probably going to be slower. That might be a factor too. So that was a very high quality match. And speaking of another high quality match, after Sabalenka was knocked out by Diana Schneider entered the semifinal against Maja Hwalinska, and that was a clash of 2 left-handers with completely different play styles and good forehands. So obviously I was very intrigued. Touch at the net and just general precision of shots from Hwalinska were on full display. There were instances where Schneider had control of a rally and she would hit bombs toward the forehand of Hwalinska, and Hwalinska, to her credit, would somehow feather touch the ball to her in a lob and then clear the net easily and clear Schneider, who is of relatively shorter stature in height, and then the lob would fall way in. There were some slices, some very juicy drop shots as well. So this stylistic play from Hwalinska will make for a very amazing final on the women's side. Now, flipping over to the men's side, that I've followed a little bit more of. Jannik Sinner, last year, 5 hours and 29 minutes head-to-head against Carlos Alcaraz. Jannik Sinner had match point, was not able to convert on that, and yet was very, very much in the hunt in the latter stages of this final of last year, where he looked like he could easily beat Carlos Alcaraz. I think Sinner was in a position where he was 2 points away from winning, even after he failed to convert those 2 match points, which were admittedly on Carlos Alcaraz's serve. Very high quality match, amazing display of perseverance, high quality tennis, creative angles, an arrival from both players in terms of high quality matches of what can be career rivals for each other. Jannik Sinner has won 6 Masters 1000 tournaments in the lead up to this French Open. Jannik Sinner was the de facto favorite after Carlos Alcaraz withdrew from the tournament owing to injury, wrist injury. We hope he returns 100% soon enough. He will still not play the Wimbledon tournament that is going to come up in a month. Grass gets only a month still. Sad storyline. Jannik Sinner is favored to be the number 1 winner, the favorite, the person who has all the chances to win his next Grand Slam after he lost to Novak Djokovic at the Australian Open. Djokovic, 38.5, beat Sinner, defending champion, 24-year-old. Again, a compelling match, compelling storyline. In the second round of this year's French Open, world number 1, Jannik Sinner, undefeated after having that Australian Open loss, loses in the second round in very hot conditions. A lack of preparedness, overload, lots of questions. Some of those answers were also given. Jannik Sinner cited illness and not heat, exhaustion, or nothing to do with the conditions. Very interesting, something to be followed. I had reviewed the scenario where he lost that match, and I had covered that match as well. And my impression was that it does not take away from what he has accomplished. 6 straight Masters in a row, and he completed the set of Masters. And unfortunately, he was not able to complete the set of Grand Slams. He's only missing that French Open trophy from his career Grand Slam resume. So that is a storyline that remains to be completed, and yet Jannik Sinner out in the second round, which means the door opens for one Novak Djokovic, who is in the hunt for his 25th Grand Slam tournament. Novak Djokovic, by his own right, the other story, had not played a match ever since I think it was in Indian Wells, where he had a match against Jack Draper, got injured, shoulder injury, sidelined for about 2 months, 3 months. Only one match as preparation on the clay, which requires a lot of preparation. Novak Djokovic wins 2 matches against Frenchmen. Both Frenchmen, plays himself in, looks to be in good shape. Third round, faces off against a rising star from Brazil, João Fonseca. Is 2 points away from victory after winning the first 2 sets. Third set, he's almost running away with it. And then Fonseca decides to raise his level. Very, very drastically. The fourth set features Novak Djokovic displaying all his experience. He's again very, very close to winning. I think he was 2 points away from winning again. And he falters. He falters at that stage, and then he is, of course, experiencing heat exhaustion. Questions rise as to why he was given the afternoon slot again, after having done so against the Frenchman in the second round. So, Novak Djokovic ends up losing for the second time he has lost after having a 2-sets-to-love advantage. Novak Djokovic is not able to capitalize in what could be one of the very few opportunities he has, where both Alcaraz and Sinner are knocked out by the third round stage of a Grand Slam, where he does not have to worry about facing any of them. Of course, it is not out of the realm of possibility that he still beats the 2 of them en route to winning a Grand Slam. He was 2 sets away from doing that at the Australian Open at the age of 38 and a half, something that cannot be overstated because of how impressive it is. Then we come to the other storylines. Matteo Berrettini, 2021 Wimbledon finalist, is now returning to form after a long absence from serious contendership, owing to some injuries, lack of form, maybe some off-court issues as well. This is also coinciding with the rise of Italian tennis, at least in the form of people featuring in the latter stages of Grand Slams. You've got Yasmin Paolini on the women's side, having amazing results. Wimbledon final, I think, last year. Of course, Lorenzo Musetti sidelined from the French Open, yet Matteo Arnaldi and Flavio Cobolli feature in the semi-final lineup after Berrettini has to withdraw due to injury. So, Lorenzo Musetti sidelined with injury. Matteo Berrettini resurgent, about to announce his arrival again when he was amazing serve and huge forehand. Matteo Berrettini gets injured. Arnaldi and Cobolli in the quarterfinal, all-Italian semi-final. Surprisingly enough for all concerned, Matteo is not able to compete owing to some food poisoning or some flu or some virus. He's not able to digest food. He's not holding food down, giving rise to first-time finalist via walkover. Still does not dilute the accomplishment, Flavio Cobolli in the final. Very, very strange occurrences, so many injuries and so many backouts, leading to the final storyline leading up to the final. Alexander Sasha Zverev himself. 2020 US Open, first Grand Slam final for Alexander Zverev. Then he features in, I believe, the French Open of 2024, final against Carlos Alcaraz, 5th set. There's a call that does not go Zverev's way. I believe that is enough to rattle him, unfortunately. I think he ended up being correct, and that was when there was a huge discussion about electronic calls at the French Open, something that has not been completely adopted as of yet, and yet there was talk about that being the de facto way from here on out. We shall see. Zverev gets distracted in the 5th set, does not get the job done Unfortunately, Carlos Alcaraz wins French Open 2024. Zverev then features, I believe, in the final of the Australian Open of last year, where he is defeated soundly by one Jannik Sinner. So, furthering this narrative that Zverev is missing that slam, he could go down as in history as the best tennis player sans Grand Slam. A tag that Zverev has, I think, vocalized that he does not want to be known as. He does not want his legacy to be that. Zverev features strongly against Alcaraz in many cases. He beat Alcaraz in, I think, 2024's quarterfinal at the Australian Open. He did come up as the victor against Alcaraz in some other cases as well, in some other Grand Slam tournaments. However, now the narrative has become strongly that Zverev does not have many chances to win against those players, and even if he does, something or the other occurs that prevents him from victory, from ultimate victory. Even at the Australian Open of this year, in the semi-final, Carlos Alcaraz versus Alexander Zverev. Zverev is leading. He is about to be in the driver's seat after Alcaraz has some health issues, controversy about cramps and whether Alcaraz should have been allowed a medical timeout, and yet he is. Zverev raises concerns. Zverev is steady with his energy, starts losing steam by the fifth set. Alcaraz, after suffering cramps, is regaining, getting a second win by that time. Zverev gets broken in the fifth set. Carlos Alcaraz improves his amazing fifth set record. The only loss in five-set competition for Alcaraz has come against Matteo Berrettini very early on, so I'm not sure if we can really see that as a recent event predictor. So Zverev has this storyline of he just cannot get the job done in Grand Slams when it counts the most. A narrative that can be backed up by results, and yet it does not take away from the heart and the quality of the champion. The story leading up to Zverev in 2026's French Open is, will he get it done, or will he continue to go down as the best player without a Grand Slam in his resume, in his trophy cabinet? When the door opens, Jannik Sinner is knocked out. When the door opens, Novak Djokovic is out. In the middle of all of that, you have the one player who is seated number two, and he has the opportunity. Opportunity is knocking on his door. Will he answer? Now, some people believe it is easy when this happens because Zverev is focusing match after match, and he is definitely, easily, the most qualified champion in the remaining draw. No Djokovic, no Sinner, no Alcaraz, no Medvedev. Medvedev also gets knocked out early. No Ben Shelton, none of these players. While Fonseca also loses to Menchik. Menchik himself loses to Alexander Zverev today. And Zverev has answered with a resounding yes. I have been covering Zverev after Djokovic fell. Before that, Jannik Sinner fell. I've been covering the last few matches of Alexander Zverev, and I can say that it has been his tournament to lose. He finds himself in a unique position where he is actually the favorite to win, and has been the favorite to win, heavily favored to win, heavily expected to win, and yet giving rise to all those whispers, those naysayers who are saying when it counts the most, Zverev always fails, he will fail again. There were people who were very easily predicting a loss for Zverev even today against Menchik. And Menchik had some neck issues, and yet he won the third set. Those birds were very loud in the third set who were doubting Zverev's ability to close it out. And yet Zverev, who's trusting the process. Zverev is trusting his immaculate serve, high first serve percentage, high conversion rate of games when he is on serve, high conversion of backhand to backhand rally winners. He is also backing himself on the forehand. In the review of the last round, I believe the quarterfinal, I cited some hesitation from Zverev on the forehand wing. He took risks on the forehand. He had a larger wind-up. He was getting himself into good positions on his knee, getting some more purchase out of his knees, and his body rotation being more stable all the way through his swing. And he took risks on the forehand. He was able to flatten it out. He got some +1 opportunities. I think he was 70% of the time taking the +1 forehand and hitting it, which is far greater than his usual 50-50, taking the +1 on the backhand side after the serve. So Zverev is open to experimenting with his structure, and yet overall he's trusting his serve, he's trusting his backhand, and that should be enough against Cobolli. So we will see what really happens in these two Grand Slam finals. Regardless of the result, this will be a shaking up of the system, a rattling of the cage, a rustling of the leaves in an off-season weather, however you can paint it. It is going to be one of the most compelling tournaments, and in hindsight, it will still remain so. Almost certainly. If nothing else, this will be the first Grand Slam tournament in a very long time to feature first-time winners on both sides. So in and of itself, that is enough to make this an unprecedented tournament in recent memory. Let's see how those go. I'm not one to predict these matches. If I were to just see what I believe can happen more than should not happen, given the form of both players, I believe Mita Andreeva has higher chances to win. And on the men's side, it is Zverev's to lose. Can he? Yes. Will he? Just hopefully not, just for the sake of opportunity knocking. And this time, he is favored to win. Against Thiem in 2020, he was not favored to win. He beat the odds until the third set. He was a breakup, and everything broke down after that. He was not favored to win that time. He almost bucked the trend. He didn't do it then. Can he do it this time? He is favored to win. He has performed well after being labeled the favorite, after the exits of the other people favored to win. And he has stayed the course, and he has far greater chances of winning this final, even though very recently there is a best-of-3 victory that Cobolli has registered against Sasha Zverev. So there is intrigue involved in this match, and intrigue is definitely involved in the Andreeva and Maja Pawlinska match. Both of those are waiting to be explored tomorrow and day after. Here's the 2 great days of tennis. I might be covering both in separate videos. I might be covering both in one single video like this one. This has turned out to be a narrative retrospective of the French Open leading into the finals of both draws. We shall see what happens. This is Duncan Lievi. Until next time. Thank you.